Let's talk, Pat. Now we did the course breakdown and the key stats last week for Muirfield. Let's hit it a little bit. Reiterate for those that may not have heard last week, maybe just joining us because they think it's Tigers in the field, so now they're playing again for the first time. Let's talk about Muirfield Village, Jack's course in Dublin, Ohio. Let's talk about the subtle differences we may see this week versus last week, and how do you apply last week's results, performance, whatever? How are you approaching that? I have my thoughts on that, but let's just talk through that real quick before we get into the picks.
All right, so yeah, we are at Muirfield Village Golf Club again this week for the Memorial in Dublin, Ohio. It is a par 72 playing just over 7,400 yards. We got 133 players in this event, like you mentioned. The reason for that is because this has invitational status. So I believe that means a little more FedEx Cup points involved. PGA Tour would probably love me mentioning that. T65 and ties for the cut. This is a Jack Nicklaus design. The greens are bent grass with a little bit of POA. They are extremely undulating greens, which is what you would expect from Jack. You know, he loved playing Augusta National. That's what they have there. So when he built this course, I think he had a lot of those features in mind. But it is a traditional par 72 with 4 par 5s. They play 527, 563, 583, and 560. You got 4 par 3s. These are very tree-lined fairways, but pretty wide fairways. I think if you get down into it, it's, all right, so how is this course really going to play different from last week? I'll mention 11 holes have water in play. So you do have some trouble that you can definitely get into. And I do think you need to avoid the big numbers out here. We saw it last week. This is a second shot golf course. Fairways are wider than normal, pretty easy to hit. Here's one of the things though, that I thought was a little bit different than what we were told. The rough looked a little bit thicker and more penal last week than I thought it would be. If you did miss the fairway, you were in some trouble. If you're just watching Shot Tracker, I saw several guys miss the fairway, and then their next, they literally just bump it out 100 yards, and then their next shot was a 70 or 80 yard shot into a par 4. They're going to have that rough up even more this week. So I think that while hitting a fairway isn't as key this week as it might be on a tighter course like the one we just played, Harbortown, you still got to hit these fairways. And the rough is going to be even more penal. They're going to let it go. They're not going to cut it, I think. Or if they do cut it, they're going to have it a little bit thicker than it was last week. And then the greens are going to be way different this week. I think they're going to be a lot faster. I think they're going to roll them. They're going to be rolling at least 12, 13 on the stump. That's a big difference than where they, when they were the last week. So I think that's going to be huge. So as far as stats, I'm very similar to what I'm looking at. As far as what I was looking at last week, strokes gained approach, I think is going to be important. Scrambling is going to be important. Hitting those greens in regulation, bogey avoidance, I think more so. We're not going to see the scoring we saw last week. I don't believe we're going to get somebody at 19, 20 under. I just don't see that at all. And then I'm going to be looking at putting on bent as well. So if you look at the past champions, I'm going to say Morikawa first, which may give you a little hint as to what I'm thinking on what somebody might have done last week versus this week. But Patrick Cantlay in 2019, Bryson in 2018, Jason Duffner in 2017, Dirt McGirt in 2016, and then Lingmer 15, Hideki 14. So a lot of different styles of play have won this tournament. But there is, like you said at the beginning of the show, it's such a strong field. Now, they typically do get a strong field here. Not as strong as it is this week, but it's always pretty strong. So, but I do think there's a little bit of a strategy change because of that. I don't think you would normally see Tiger, for example, in this field at $9,000, which shows you how strong it is. So just kind of my initial thoughts on the course. I think it's going to play beautiful. I think it's going to play tougher, though, is what I think this week.
Yeah, I think it could be a little tougher if the green's a little quicker, rough a little higher. I mean, we still saw Patrick Cantlay play this event last year and shoot 19 under. So I think 19, 20 under is still doable. I mean, I don't think it's going to be over. I doubt it would be over 20, but I think it's going to be doable.
I agree. I just think they're going to try to throw these guys for a little bit of a loop. I think they're going to, especially the ones that played it last week. I think
they already know the pin placements are going to be different because they said they were going to protect the traditional pin placements on the greens for Memorial. So they know it's going to be different. Yeah. I don't think there's any loops to be thrown really. I just think the guys just know, okay, the rough's probably not going to get cut. The greens are going to be quicker, and that's it. Like, and I just don't. That's the other thing I was going to talk about in terms of an approach to this week. I'm not really waiting necessarily. Like, I'm not going to ding a guy who otherwise I would want to play because he didn't play the workday. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm also not going to overhype performance at the work. I'm not going to treat the performance at workday that much different than I would treat the performance the week before any event at a completely different golf course. I think it matters a little bit.
I think you do. I actually don't think you add any extra importance to it. I think you think of it as recent form, even though it was the same course, but I think you just think of it as recent form.
Yeah. I mean, it is. Yeah, and in terms of, like, obviously we saw what it takes to play well. And in this field, listen, for DFS purposes, to me, the number one thing this week is ownership leverage. Again, it's ownership leverage. I care more about that, and we'll rattle off stats and stuff like that. We don't spend a whole lot of time trying to project ownership levels on the podcast on a Monday night because they're going to change a lot. There's no point in doing that. That's what the Chalk Bomb email is for. That's what the Nut Hut chat is for on Wednesday when we have a better idea. But in terms of DFS, I think ownership leverage is key because this is a cream of the crop field. There are a ton of very capable players to win this golf tournament. And we've seen, like you said, even in very strong fields, we've seen interesting names win. David Lingmerth, William McGirt. Like, we've seen plenty of interesting names hit here. It's not always just the studs. So, I think there's a ton of players that actually have a legitimate chance to win this golf tournament. So I'm not going to get too bogged down with stats, especially if two guys are close. I think ownership leverage in tournaments is key. Now, from the betting perspective, obviously it comes down to value on, in terms of odds, win equity, and how your gut, how you feel like things are matching up. But it's going to be an interesting week. It's going to be an awesome week with Tiger back. He moves the needle for sure. A lot more people watching, a lot more people playing DFS. He impacts the betting market significantly. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, there's a lot going on, and I'm excited about it. That being said, I do think recency bias, if we're still talking strategy, I think recency bias is definitely something to be aware of. I made note of a few things. I think these players that performed really well last week are obviously going to get a recency bias that's going to tend to trend them up. If we're talking about DFS, going to drive their ownership up. If we're talking about betting odds, maybe it shortened those odds a little bit more than typically. But obviously Patrick Cantlay, who had an incredible run on the weekend, who's defending champ from last year. He was the highest owned player last week. He was around 27% owned in most contests. He's going to go up. Woodland's going to go up. Victor Hovland's going to go up. Morikawa's obviously going to go up. JT's obviously going to go up. And I even think Xander's going to pop up a little bit in terms of people going, okay. So I think those guys are going to be, players that are going to be really popular. Now, there are a number of people who pissed off a lot of people that were owned highly. We'll get to some of those here in just a little bit. Hideki's one that comes to mind right up at the top, who were owned a little higher and probably disappointed. He finished tied for 22nd, but he finished 42nd in birdies. So in terms of DraftKings scoring, not so great. And then you've got 6 names who this is their 6th event in a row. Now, 6 key names. There may be more. But Sung J M, shocker, Victor Hovland, Matt Wolff, Patrick Reed, Harold Varner, and Sepp Straka. 6 names who this will be their 6th event in a row. They have played every event since the restart. Obviously him, Hove, Wolff, pretty young guys. HV3, pretty young guys. Straka's pretty young guy. Reed's your old veteran there. Hovland definitely showed no signs of slowing down last week. So do with that what you
Yeah, I'm not
will, but
really.
6
Yeah.
events in a row is a lot of events. That's a lot of golf.
The
Okay.
one I think that would affect the most would be Patrick Reed, just because I'm surprised that he's
Yeah.
done that 6 weeks in a row. Maybe he's
Yeah.
just trying to get away from Justine, like she's not traveling with him, maybe, and so he's
Oh
just like,
God.
"Oh, this is great. I'm having a
He could
great
be so
time."
lucky. He could be so lucky.